Well, hello, Candice, and hello, everybody. Let me start by saying what this is, because this is a whole new endeavor. I'm J. Cameron Carter. I am a professor. I'm a scholar of religion. I've been known to do work in theology. Some have called me a theologian. Sometimes I still call myself a theologian, depending on what the conversation is. But ultimately, I'm my grandmother's grandson. And she was a serious Christian. And I don't care how much I run from it. In some sense, I'm still going to always be in it. As my poet friend Fred Moten has said in one of his chapbook collections. I am joined by the wonderful Candice Marie Benbow. Now, I got to tell y'all who this person is. Okay. Candice was a student in a number of my classes when I taught at Duke. And I always had this notion when I was a teacher, and I still do, that the task of the teacher is to aid and facilitate the student to be released into their own vision. And when they are released into their own vision, something dynamic happens. The teacher becomes the student to the one who was a student. And that's how I see myself to this woman right here, Candice. The student has now become an important teacher to me. Candice is a wonderful and powerful and astute reader of culture, reads culture through a religious Christian theological lens, and is no mean, by which I mean smooth and adept writer. I am so overjoyed to have her joining me in this new endeavor of mine. This endeavor, I should say, as we get off the ground, is called the Religion Otherwise Project. This is the podcast of that project. I sort of started this project because while I am deeply committed as an academic in doing scholarly research and publishing my research findings and my research ideas, I'm also deeply concerned, let's put it that way, that we scholars start to make a different type of and wider public footprint. Our world needs the knowledge that we're doing. And so this whole endeavor, the Religion Otherwise Project, is a project that I conceived. I'm going to use my grandmama's language. I felt a deep calling to do, to try and figure out how we can think religion otherwise, to think it differently, and not let the reigning terms of often violence couched inside of religious practice, couched inside of Christian practice and other forms of religious practice, to no longer let them have the final say. And so I thought that the way to do this was to call upon people that I know, who I know are doing incredible work, to help me think about this and to have them speak to you about this. And I wanted the first person that I talked to about this to be this woman right here, Candice Marie Benbow. Candice, I'm so glad that you're here. Let's talk.
This. I'm so happy.
Yes, I'm glad that you are here. Glad that you are here. You're looking wonderful in these times.
Wouldn't be anywhere else. You know, I call myself a J. Cameron Carterian. So.
Oh, Lord, Lord, Lord.
So I am so happy to be here.
Listen, I'm so glad that you are here. We already had a pre-conversation. I said this thing was getting so good. I said we better record this, and so we're gonna jump in, everybody. Candice and I have about 5. I told her about 5 general areas that I wanted to cover, but I'm sure that this thing is going to just improvisationally go where it needs to go, and we just trust that it'll be worthwhile to you, that it'll be a blessing to you. So, Candice, eventually we're gonna get to that book that's behind you, Red Lip Theology, in this book that I have right here, Red Lip Theology. We're going to come to it, but I want to build our way to it, if you would allow me to do that.
Yes.
And we're recording this. This is what, February the 13th, Thursday, February the 13th. We are just about 2 weeks and some change maybe into this new political moment, the Trump 2.0, Trump administration. And the politics, I mean, how we can't act like it's not there. It is there. The politics, and I wanted to just get your take on how you're reading the politics. We know that the election back in November featured this woman. People want to say woman of color, man. She a black woman, man. People be tripping. Yeah, she's a black woman. Okay, let's just start there. And what's the beautiful thing about blackness is that it does not oppose itself to her Asian background either. Blackness is big, it's wide, it's multiple, it's many. That's what blackness is. It's never singular. So she black woman, especially for this conversation.
Exactly.
So I'm interested in your take on her candidacy, what you saw went right, what you saw went wrong, and also this question of what I'm seeing as a struggle of faith, both around, former religious faith, but also faith in the possibility of political struggle and change, cultural struggle and change. You know that image that was circulating
Yeah.
in social media. I think it was some buildings in the city was burning,
Mhm.
and you had these black women basically saying, we're tired, we're not jumping into this anymore, y'all got it. And they
Yeah.
just sat back sipping their tea, I believe,
Yeah.
coffee. Maybe I'm a coffee drinker, so I want to believe it was coffee, but coffee and tea. And meanwhile, what they were looking out upon, the city, the world, was just a burning.
Burning.
So for me, I'm interested in your thoughts about that. I have some thoughts, but I want to hear what you got to say.
Yeah. Well, first, I'm excited. I mean, this is a necessary endeavor of yours, so I'm really excited that it's happening. I remember when you were talking about it, so that we are
Yeah,
here is a good thing.
we are
But
here.
I am like, I feel like these 2.5, 3 weeks feel like years,
Yes,
decades. We have lived decades in them.
yes, we have.
Be very honest that
Mm-hmm.
when Kamala was nominated, I was
Uh-huh.
excited. Um, and I'm gonna say what I probably have never said, that if men have a chance
Mm-hmm.
to have a head and sit at the most powerful table,
Mm-hmm.
women do too, and we
Indeed.
should have that right, and they don't have to do it in the ways that we think women are gonna be these nurturers. And
Mm-hmm.
I was excited because I was like, if anybody get to be ruthless and
Mm-hmm.
cutthroat, it's our chance to be ruthless and cutthroat.
Cutthroat.
I think that there, for me, it was for all of the problems that the American presidency is.
Mm-hmm.
I make no concessions in trying to attempt to sanitize it because she was running.
Right.
I feel like that we deserve, Black women deserve to be at the head of it just like everybody else has had an opportunity to, right? And so I was excited because, one, for that chance, two, for that level of accountability,
Mm-hmm.
and three, because I actually did think that even for where I may have differed with her in policy, that she got us steps closer to the world that I want to see, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I think that that was the case for a lot of us. And then there's this pesky thing called white supremacy
Mm-hmm.
that does
that
what white
that
supremacy
thing.
does, right?
Yeah, there is that.
And there are people who will dissect what she did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that none of that can be done
Mm-hmm.
outside of the context of she ran an amazing campaign in 100 days.
That part.
And it cannot be outside of the context that Black women have always had to run behind the 8 ball and
Mm-hmm.
then get it in the corner pocket. Like we've never been given the fullness of the field
Mm.
and fair play. And for as much as we respect and I think that honestly, when history looks back, Joe Biden will be one of the most progressive presidents that we saw
Yeah.
in our American presidency. But I mean, he still was an old white man who held on until he couldn't hold on no more.
Right.
And
Had to be kicked out,
so,
kicking and screaming.
listen, like I can't wait for the memoir, to tell you the truth, because I think he's
I
gonna tell
know.
the truth.
You know it's gonna be juicy.
You know it is. And so I don't think that any analysis of her performance
Mm-hmm.
that does not account for that, does not account for the ways that gender and racism converge on Black women's bodies and
Mm-hmm.
on our efforts I don't think that any kind of critique that
Hmm.
is void of that is fair.
Right.
And what is happening is that the majority of the critiques are void of that because nobody wants to just, because white folk don't want to admit that white folks are white folks, right?
Right.
And that we're supposed to just sit here and pretend like the playing field was level, and we're supposed to pretend as if the the racism and the supremacy that is encoded into American DNA just went to sleep the
Right.
Tuesday of the election, and everybody voted based off of who was best for this country. Like, no. Play in somebody else's face, right? And so what we now have is an outcome that has left the majority of Black women saying, get somebody else to do it.
Right.
Because from the time Black people have appeared on this continent,
Hmm.
we have labored and suffered in unimaginable ways to ensure and create against our will.
Right.
Let's be very
Let's be
frank,
clear.
very clear. We have labored to ensure that America could be what America wanted it to be,
Hmm.
right? With no gratitude, with no thanks, with no like and now we are in a moment where Black women have been told, particularly my generation and the
Hmm.
younger generations, if you just get the degree, if
Hmm.
you just get the job, if you just do X, Y, and Z, the doors will open for you, right?
Right.
That we have moved beyond certain things
Mm.
that would have made her becoming president and inevitable because we're talking about common sense, right?
Right.
And so now you're faced with the reality that that's not the case. And what has become, I want to say, the default now,
Hmm.
default setting is, well, we just opt out, right?
Right.
And I saw a lot of people saying that. I remember like right after the election, I lost my voice. I was just crying. I was not good. I was broken. I was just broken. The only good thing, the now I won't even call it a good thing. The only point of solace that I had was
Hmm.
that I was glad my grandmother did not get to
Get
experience
to
that.
see this. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that, like and do you know how like painful that is
That's
to
weird. I mean, it's in
say
its own way, you know?
that like I was the only thing that made me feel better was that my grandmother didn't have to see that because I remember how sad she was when he won the first time. And I remember how happy she was when she said it was a sister in the White House. So
Hmm.
I remember that. And
Yeah.
it would have broken her to
Yeah.
see the country relapse in such an evil way in the face of her. So I was so glad that grandma didn't get to see that.
Hmm.
But I remembered feeling that for a minute of like, well, I'm done. And then I was like, I can't be done because I'm not white, right? Like
Right.
to not care about people
You need
is
to
such a
stop. I can't be done because I'm not white.
so
Yeah.
like I
I
like
mean, what you're putting your finger on is the there's a certain kind of positionality
mhm,
or
mhm,
perceived
mhm,
positionality that
mhm.
makes one think they can simply opt out.
Yeah,
When you're in a world
yeah.
that says whether you choose to opt out or not, we will drag you back in.
We will drag you back in. And I think that that's what, when I saw the picture that you are referencing, that's what I saw was that you had this city, essentially the world was on fire.
Hmm.
And you had sisters with their legs crossed and their arms folded, looking at it, sipping tea and coffee. And the first thing that I thought about was we are in the fire right?
Right.
That when these policies are enacted,
Mm-hmm.
when empire falls, and when empire does its best to sturdy itself from
Mm-hmm.
its inevitable fall, it sturdies itself on us, right?
Yes.
And so we cannot afford to look at the fire
Mm-hmm.
because we're looking at each other burn, right? And I remember I said, I was like, I never want to get to a place
Mm-hmm.
where that is my position, because that is a posture of white supremacy.
Right.
That is the posture that led us here, and it is a posture that continues to be pervasive,
Mm-hmm.
that we are now, I honestly feel like religion and theology is waking up to
Mm-hmm.
what has happened in this moment that we now have to combat. And so I could not, and I push against it, because we have always been a people who, and I don't talk about resiliency for the sake of
Mm-hmm.
how people are like, everybody didn't die, we survived. Well, no, some of
Right.
us didn't, and
Yeah,
that
a lot of us didn't.
a lot of us did not.
Some
A
of them
lot
people
of
went
us,
into that swamp on the runaway, and the gators got them, the snakes got
listen,
them. They didn't
listen,
make it.
they did not make it. And here's the thing. A lot of us didn't survive Trump 1.0, right?
That's the truth.
And so we have to be vigilant. What this moment requires
Mm-hmm.
is a level of vigilance that I am pushing and hoping
Mm-hmm.
and challenging those in my space and around me to continue to see, because we cannot afford to say, get somebody else to do it, even in defeat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think about, and I think it's because I'm writing about her in theory, and really trying to sit even more with her. But like, I think about Hagar being sent back
Mm-hmm.
and still deciding that where she was worthy to be named enough
Mm-hmm.
that somebody else coming
Mm-hmm.
who would stand in that same space would know that they were not alone, and would know that they are not defeated, right? And so what does it look like for us to have, like, we literally got told to go back.
Yeah. For the audience, because I want to make sure people didn't miss this move that you're making. It's a crucial move. For the audience's sake, take us into this scriptural passage that you are in your own way doing some sort of exegetical dance with.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about when Hagar flees with her baby from captivity with
Abram
well,
and Sarai.
we not finna say that was she was a sister wife. It was,
Mm-hmm.
as many people have tried to like glamorize that as of late. And she is ready to die, because it does not matter. Like, death is really is it is better, and it is freedom,
Mm-hmm.
right? And God is like, no, I need you to go back. And
I
in
believe
going
this is
back,
Genesis 16, right? I believe 16 and 21 are the two
yeah, like
Hagar
it's yeah.
chapters.
And so, and God tells Hagar to go back, and promises to make a nation from
Mm,
her son, from her seed, from her offspring, so that like she has to go back to the very place that she had just fled from, and
mm-hmm.
decided it's better to be dead than to go back there.
Right. The place of her decimation, she's told to go back to.
Back to.
I mean, this is the thing that I hear
Yeah. Yeah.
you're wrestling with. This is what you're dealing with.
I am, because that night, that Tuesday night, I'm like, wait, we're literally going back. Like,
Mm-hmm.
in what world does any of that make sense? And Hagar names that place, and to translate it, it is the God who sees. Like, this
Yes.
is the place where the God has seen me. in my most broken, in my most defeated, in my most, and I'll use barren for lack of a better word in this moment, because there was no life. She desired no more life, right?
Right, right.
This, in this moment, God sees me. The only woman, the only person to name a place, right? And it becomes this monument. It becomes this space. I sit back and I have thought about, since the election, who else came to that place and needed to know that God could see them in that worst moment?
Yes.
Who came to that place ready to die and found faith and hope again? While Hagar is back dealing with what she left. You know what I'm saying? And in a kind of a worse sense, in the worst sense, because Sarah, at this point, like, you know, we glamorize her, but she, you know, she a little, how dare you, right? And
Yeah.
so I think about that as, you know, I'm in the tradition of Dolores Williams, who names and readily understands the experience of Hagar to be mirror the experiences of Black women in America. And so in many ways, I have been thinking about this notion with Vice President Harris that Hagar has kind of had a glow up. Like, Hagar went back, glowed up, like she got some degrees. She is a policy maker.
Right, right.
You know, like, I mean, everybody know the girl from the hood and from the worst of circumstances, who made it out and is this storied, like, we are so proud of you moment, right? And yet she goes no further than what white folks say her skin
Will allow her to go.
to be allowed to go,
That's
right?
right.
And I think that what I am wrestling with in this moment is, I can't afford to be hands off,
Right.
because I remembered my cousin, who is 17, who can't wait to go to college and go to law school and become an attorney and go into politics, right? The faith that she deserves for me to hold on to these dreams for her, right? And to actively create a world in which she gets to flourish. Her 13-year-old sister, her 8-year-old sister, and her 5-year-old sister get to flourish, right? And so that is what is always at the mind and at the forefront for me, is that Hagar went back, but somebody else came through that space. What is left in that space, and what is created from the world and into the world when we have to go back into spaces that are death dealing, into spaces that mean, as my grandma would say, mean us no good, right? But there is something that is still worth preserving and fighting for. And that's where I am in this moment. And that's where I'm really trying to push a lot of us to kind of think through.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking, in light of what you just said here, one of the things that came to mind, and maybe you could speak to, is, I mean, you've the way you've laid this out gave me a vision of what's behind a picture of the sort that we've been talking about. You know, these women sitting atop a building, sipping their tea, coffee. Pardon me, wanted to say gin and juice, sipping on gin and juice.
It's something in there.
But sitting back while the world burns, when in fact they're also burning, is this long story of exhaustion, right? A history of exhaustion that marks Black life, right? You might even say, like, American is built on Native and Black exhaustion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I hear you also navigating that situation by saying that there's also someone else in those spaces we're sent back to, in which we do some work for other people too, right? And that got me to thinking about the history right alongside exhaustion, but this kind of history of also constant working towards something else, right? Working to build something else, right? One of the words that is in circulation now in various circles is world making. Zora Neale Hurston talking about making a way out of no way, but the work of making under conditions of exhaustion. The exhaustion, the reality of exhaustion and the reality of creation are joined at the hip.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hear you trying to walk the straits between exhaustion and yet craft, making. We might even say artistry in that sense. If the artist is the poet and the poet is the one who tries to make alternate worlds, there's this curious relationship between, we might say, the wound and the blessing. Not that we're blessed because of the wound. I wouldn't dare say that.
Yeah.
But
I know
there's this juxtaposition, there's this adjacency between exhaustion and woundedness and the possibilities of crafting and making what I've called here the blessing, the wound and the blessing. And I'm just wondering, maybe even like beginning to lean into the work of artistry and seeing Hagar as an artist at that point. The capacity to go back is bound up with her as a kind of artist, this Black Hagar artist.
And it's so funny. I think part of it too is that that not only is it making, but it's the dance of making and unmaking, right? That I have been struck with this notion of Hagar. Speaking to your point of exhaustion, what does it look like to be filled? What does it look like to create from a level of from a full cup, from a level of refreshing? And I think that for Black life in America has always had us creating art tired.
Yes.
We have always been making and unmaking ourselves, trying to catch our breath.
Mm-hmm.
So a tradition, it's Black History Month, and so a tradition that my grandmother had since because I wasn't I wasn't born when the first one came out, but my grandma made us watch Roots every Black History Month. And so I still watch it every February, and I just went through and watched it. And it took me back to, as it finished, it auto-played the Book of Negroes. And there's a line in the Book of Negroes that goes through the episodes, "We ain't killable." And I like every time I heard it and hear it, it does something to me that we ain't killable, because it is as if this world does not want us exhausted. This world wants us dead, right? And so the fact that we are tired is the resistance in and of itself, and is the testament and the testimony that we ain't killable, right? And so I think about what it means to create from that space, what it means to go and make life, make goodness, make memories, make meaning when you are tired, when you are broken, and when you are somewhere that you do not want to be, right? So one of the things that has been, I wrote it, that has been holding me, was that Hagar had good times too. I wrote that to myself because I cannot and I refuse to believe that she went back and it was just despair, because that is not one, that's incongruent with who I believe God to be, but it's also incongruent with what I know vulnerable and marginalized people to accomplish and to be
Yeah.
able to do in the midst of hard and evil times. That's why I take 2 hours a day now to just scroll and watch reels on Instagram because we are some of the most creative and hilarious people. And some of the things I watch literally, Imma send it to you after we get off, but I was watching today a video of a woman who taught her parakeet how to speak in tongues.
Please
I
stop.
laughed.
Send that to me.
I will.
I can't
I
wait to see
laughed.
this.
I laughed to tears.
My God.
And I sent it to my uncle. I sent it to I laughed all day off
You
of
got
it.
to send me that.
And it is like I sit and I'm intentional about watching the reels that we do,
Mm-hmm.
like the ways that even that we are trying to, in a moment where we are consistently tired,
Mm-hmm.
give each other a breath of fresh air. Give each other wind, right?
Mm-hmm.
That till we get to the next stop. Because what we do know about this moment that we are in is that it is foolishness from hour to hour.
I mean, nonstop.
So, and I understand why the hymn says, "Give me strength for today,
Right.
right hope for tomorrow."
Tomorrow. Right.
I can't let me just hope it's gonna be okay, but give me enough to get through today, right? And so when you think about art in this moment, it is doing what art has always done, which is one, it creatively has articulated the times
Mm-hmm.
that Black folks have found themselves and found ourselves in. It has also too reminded us of our creativity and our capacity, even beyond creativity, our capacity for life and meaning making beyond the horrors and evils of this moment. And reminded us consistently of what we deserve. We deserve joy. You know, as a theologian who, as a person who walks by the life and work and personal work of Jesus, the man said he came that I might have life and have it more
Mm-hmm.
abundantly. Right? He said it was his father's good pleasure to give me the keys. It is imperative. It is essential to Jesus's mission
Mm-hmm.
that I have joy in this life, that we have joy in this life. Our art shows us that, right? Like
Right.
I've been sitting back, like, so we're recording this like a week after, not even a week after, within the week
Mm-hmm.
of following Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance.
Right.
And I've been like watching all of the conversations, and of
Mm-hmm.
course we could have did an episode, and I really want you to get some folks on here and do an episode about that
Just
alone.
alone.
About that alone.
That thing serious.
It's y'all. I just want to hear like some. I honestly just like in my head. I was like, if I was a producer, just some writers, some artists, some theologians, some teachers in a barbershop
And
watching it
break
and
this thing
talking and breaking it.
down.
Like I just think it would be great.
Mm-hmm.
But like even as I'm watching the conversation, one of the things that I'm grateful for is that it gave us fresh wind. Like, I don't know how many people text me after that and was just like, I love being Black.
Yeah.
Like, it felt good to see that. Like, it
Oh
just,
my God.
it was empowering to, like, it didn't matter who was in the audience. It didn't matter if Trump had left already. It didn't like it felt like a ICU.
Yep.
I
It's
know it.
almost like
Go ahead.
notwithstanding that the performance was public, I mean,
Mhm.
shoot, how much more public can you get? It's the
Exactly.
halftime of the Super Bowl. And at the same time that it was deeply public, it was profoundly private, which is to say, if you were in it, if you knew the spirit and the soul from which it cometh. I'll talk like
Yeah.
King James right now. The spirit and the soul from which it cometh. If you were inside it, you were inside something that was at the very moment that it was deeply public, it was profoundly private. I'll give you an example. I was at the gym the other day, and one of my friends actually is a former colleague of mine. We're still friends, but former colleague of mine at Duke. We go to the same gym,
Mhm.
and we're at the gym, and this friend of mine, brilliant. If I call the name, you would know it. I'm not gonna call the name, but
Okay.
brilliant. And she said to me, you know, I got a call from my partner who was out of town during the weekend and watched the performance away. And so she said, my partner called me and told me, she said to me, well, I never felt so old and apart from what was happening in the halftime performance. Right. So it's kind of real progressive folks. It's like, they were down with it and at the same time admitted
Mhm.
it was just I didn't know what was going on. I was
Mhm.
just, and that's that. It's not the best I can come up with right now. Is there's a certain privacy about it, but
Mhm.
that privacy had its own type of public about it. It wasn't the
Yeah.
public. It was some other deeper public. And I love the way you put it. It felt good. I just made a note that you said when you were describing. You said it felt
It
good.
did.
That formulation is crucial.
It did. Like, it's so funny that you gave that example of you at the gym. I was at the gym and we were talking about that there were so many white people who were saying like that they didn't understand it, they didn't get it, it just
Mhm.
and a lot, and it was funny because a lot of them were trying to also qualify that they liked rap, was they were like giving their because they didn't want folks to think that. And I said, and the black people got it when I said it at the gym, the white folks didn't. I was like, well, this is an instance where the black folks was at the grown people's table and the white people was at the kiddie table or had to go outside. And
Right.
everybody laughed. The
Uh-huh.
black folks laughed because they know culturally
Uh-huh.
that's exactly what happens.
That's
The grown
exactly what
folks
happened.
at the grown folks table, and kids don't be around. Even if you are in the same house
Mm.
and in
Uh-huh.
the same space,
Right.
and you hear the conversation going on. You know that is not a conversation that you are supposed to take part in or be a part of.
That's right.
So when I said it, all the black folks busted out and started laughing because they knew exactly what I was talking about. And the black
Uh-huh.
and the white folks were looking at me like, okay, Candice. But there was there was this moment that it was just like, I see y'all. Like it felt like, and here's the thing. What we know is that Kendrick, that kind of performance, we were going to get from Kendrick because that is who Kendrick is.
That's right.
But it also speaks to artists cannot just create art for us in this moment without truly loving us. Like to be an artist for black people, you got to also love black people.
You gotta
That
love.
is somebody who knew the moment that we were in and who gave us a performance
Right.
that spoke to the moment that we were in that we needed, right?
It,
Like
mhm.
it became this breath of fresh air for us to go back into this on Monday.
Listen, it to me, it goes back to what you just said in your exegesis and commentary on Genesis 16, where we get the story of Hagar and then God says, go back. And then you rightly pick up on that name that's given in that moment, the God who sees. There was a sense in which the art, as driven
Mhm.
by love, it was
Mhm.
an artistry that says, I see you.
See you.
And to your language here, that felt good, right? That moment of there was a moment of pleasure in the midst of the exhaustion and the pain. That's premised on a love that sees. I mean,
You know
I just
what?
gave I hope I just gave what really is a womanist interpretation
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
Kendrick performance.
And you know what? I'm actually getting ready to add Beyonce's Christmas performance too for the halftime show, because we get that after the election, in a moment where we are all literally trying to make sense of what is to come. And you
Yep,
have folks
prepping for
saying
what is to come.
you have folks saying like, it don't even feel like Christmas. Like you have folks like trying
Right.
to drudge themselves to make the holiday.
Right.
Because as my cousin said, this
To
holiday,
find joy and merriment.
right? My cousin was like,
Right.
this Christmas ain't Christmasing, and
Right.
it was because there was so much grief in the air that it was palpable.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
had all of us, folks, Netflix had to go find some bandwidth for all of us who broke away from our families, from our routines, because it don't always include a Christmas, watching a game on Christmas, to watch this performance that really was like, you know what? I see y'all, and we too are America,
Yes.
and we gon' like hearing Blackbird, and I'm just like hearing five Black women sing Blackbird, and like I
Mm-hmm.
remember sitting on my couch and I just started crying because I was like, I didn't even know I needed that as a hymn right now, right? That
Right.
like,
Right. Right.
take these broken wings and learn to fly, like.
Yes.
This, you still gotta do something. Like, we still
Yes.
have to figure something out. And
Yep.
that is the charge of the artist. Like, that is what, like that is what we are called to do. Like, I think about, and I'll end it here. Like, I just read something. I want to say it was a comment on Threads that Darnell Moore, who is this powerful theologian and writer and activist, Darnell Moore said, "This is the time for the writers to write. This is the time for the singers to sing. It's time for the dancers to dance." Like, he was like, "You gotta make art now. You gotta do that thing now that fuels you, that fuels us." And I think about those two things in the midst of this political moment, at the beginnings of this political moment, that were really these love letters to us, that was like, I see you, it hurts, but we ain't killable. And
Unkillable.
there is something to our fight. There's something to our resilience. There's something to our joy.
Yeah.
There's something to all of that we got to lean into further in this moment than we have before.
Absolutely. Oh my God, you ain't said nothing but a word. You ain't said nothing but a word. I mean, and it's a Dolores Williams point. I
Mhm.
remember when I was back in seminary, and for the life of me, I wanted to get why Dolores Williams kept saying this, but that evangelical theological sensibility hadn't completely broken me yet. I knew it was something wrong with it, but I didn't know how to break it. So when Dolores Williams says in Sisters in the Wilderness that Jesus didn't die because he had to.
Mhm.
Now again, many of us in these kind of Christian spaces, we are brought up on a diet. Jesus had to die. I mean, much of our Easter hooping won't work. Yeah, he had to die. But Dolores Williams kept saying, no, he did not. He did not have to die. He was crucified by the empire because of how he lived.
How he lived.
His life was the target.
Yeah.
And it becomes this galvaning message in Sisters in the Wilderness that it's about a life.
Yeah.
It's about the pleasures and the joys of life.
Life.
That's what the empire targeted, right? That's what we use that religious language. That's what Satan targeted. That's
Yeah.
what the Antichrist wanted to bring down, a
Mhm.
form of living.
Yeah.
And we gotta. I hear you saying we gotta lean into that.
Yeah. It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's
It is.
threatening. It's threatening to the empire to live like
It
this.
is. It
I
is,
dare you to live in joy.
like it requires absolutely everything from you. Um because it is an intentional choice in the face of what empire makes look easy, which is despair, right? Like
Right.
it is easy to be apathetic, nihilistic. It is easy to give in to all of the, well, that's it, you know,
Yeah.
wrap it up. Like
Wipe your
that
hands of it.
it is that's it's so easy to do that. And I think that what I am what I'm pushing myself every single day is, how do I live a life that is in full defiance of everything that wants to kill me, right? Like one of the
Right.
things that I had to like catch myself on, and it was I was in prayer time thinking about it, and I was like, you sit and we always like we quote Lucille Clifton's poem, and we need to, as Black women and as Black people, and we shout at that last line, "Won't you celebrate with me?" That every day,
Mm-hmm.
something has tried to kill me and has failed. But I will never forget. I was sitting there and I was like, yeah, but I living intentionally so that those things fail, or are they just failing because I'm living on some kind of like residual, like, am I being intentional about staring in the face of everything that wants me dead and living? And it was in that moment that I was like, okay, so what do I want to do? And I just was like, I want to learn how to knit this year. I want to go back to playing the piano. I used to play the piano as a little girl. And I was like, I want to play hymns again. Like I want things that feel me, that are not for mass consumption, that don't
Yes.
turn into something that I make a profit off of. But they just feel me, right? I want
Yeah.
more time with my friends to come and eat at my house and we just laugh and we talk.
Huh.
I want more time where we love on each other, because it's going to be those moments.
Right.
My friend groups, my group chats, we've had to have real conversations with each other this year about being honest and open and more transparent and more vulnerable about when we're not good, right? Like there's this, and I knew I fell into that of just feeling like, okay, like I can't always tell them because everybody got their own stuff. And it's like, and we all gonna have our own stuff. But in community, we have to lift each other, and we gotta lean on each other. And I think that
Yes.
what is also happening in this moment, I think, and we've seen a lot of it, is that even the ways that we have connected online are being threatened, because you have these you old buddy running Twitter, and I left Twitter, and that was my favorite one. And you got Zuckerberg, I don't know what he finna do, but
Oh.
cowering, right? And so
Uh-huh.
you have these spaces that were sites of online communion, and these
Mm-hmm.
places where they were like these hush harbors that you could find your
Yeah.
people in the midst of everything that was going on, have now become sites of surveillance and extreme toxicity. And that is all designed to disperse us again, right? So that like we are not
Mm.
as connected and we are not as united and we are not as fortified as we once were. And so, if we know that, and if we are wrestling, rightfully so, with some of our presence and our engagements in these spaces, then it means that we got to do more of the work offline to be connected and to strengthen the tether that we have to each other.
Listen, you are. This is something I've been thinking a whole lot about. I
Yeah.
think it's important that those who would listen to this conversation. I'm thinking about his last name is Baptiste. He wrote that wonderful history of how the U.S. was made on the backs of cotton. He's a
Ooh.
historian. Edward Baptiste, that's his name. Edward Baptiste. So anybody wanted to go to Amazon and plug that name in, Edward Baptiste, Baptist with E on the end. He wrote this book. I think it's something like When Cotton Was King or something like this, but it's a history of how cotton made the United States. And he tells a story, or several stories, but one in particular is still in my mind. He has this story about what the plantation fundamentally did. And at the heart of it was it individuated us. That's what it sought to do. So everybody had to carry their, rightful, quantity of cotton for the day. And if you didn't, you would get lashes, you would get beaten. And one of the chief rules is that no matter the age of the enslaved, could be a young person, 10 years old, nobody can help anybody else. Now, these children, they often couldn't carry the cotton, so they would get beaten. And one of the chief things that was doing was to absolutely disaggregate us, to break the connections of care, and to turn us into self-absorbed. I got mine, you better get yours. And so I was thinking about when you were just laying this out, and that story came to mind. I thought about I ran into a friend. You may remember her. You remember Kiki Barnes?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So I was going into the store the other day, and I was going in, Kiki was coming out, and I saw Kiki. I said, "Girl." So we gave her a little hug, and we chatted it up. And she told me, I said, "I heard that you were preaching the other day." She said, "Oh, yeah, I preach." I said, "You give me the short version." She said, "I came from that passage." And she said, "I came from that passage that says, 'Forsake not the assembly of yourselves together as the manner of some is.'" And I said, "Girl, you said that?" She said, "Yeah." I said, this moment is trying to cripple our capacities to be with each other. That's what it's trying to rob us of.
Yeah, yeah,
Again, these structures of individuation
yeah.
and trying to take that from us. And then the last thing that came to mind was this Latin American brother I know, scholar, but he's also was involved in the Zapatista movement in Mexico.
Okay.
And he's done some important work. And he's got this phrase that it goes like this: we have to recommit ourselves to our practices of assembly. The Zapatista movement of struggle for him was built upon practices of getting together.
Yeah, I like
And
that.
what I hear you saying is that our practices of getting together, even at the electronic level, are going to be increasingly under constraint, under pressure. And we
Yeah,
have to respond to that pressure
yeah,
we have to get much more local and granular in the way we get together.
yeah. It is, and I was telling you earlier, but like this is, I love when we talk because it's also crystallizing work that I've been thinking through. But like this is another reason why to
Huh?
get somebody else to do it does not work, because that's antithetical to who we have always been, and to who we need to be. And I think that one of the things, particularly as we look at kind of like what I want to say about institutions in this moment, right, is that like, I mean, they have essentially, and I say this as somebody who went back and joined the church last year,
Mm-hmm.
these institutions for us are not the spaces where that assembly and that connectivity and that cohesion will take place.
That's right.
And that is for
Candice, keep talking. Keep talking. I just gotta plug in my speaker because the light is blinking
okay.
on my
Yeah.
Bose speaker. So, but keep talking. I don't want to
Okay.
lose what you're saying. So
No,
I'm hearing you. I'm just plugging it up to give it some juice.
yeah, like it is the church has, particularly in this moment, and I think it was really interesting because during the I saw what always happens, right? But like
Uh huh.
it was this revitalization of black church and like the and the black prophetic tradition as it relates to political engagement. And I mean, you see it every time. I mean, but you didn't see it as exciting as it was the last time we saw it this excited was with Obama, right? And even then,
Right.
we had to kind of like piece that excitement together because, we know what he did to his pastor. And
Yeah, we know.
we also
Don't get
know
me
that
started.
like you don't even get you don't get him at Trinity without Michelle, right? So like
That's right.
there
Right.
was an allegiance that we had to Barack Obama that was grounded in our love for Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the case. With her, with Kamala Harris, you had a woman who has been a member of Third Baptist Church for like 30 years, was a
Uh-huh.
member of a Black Church of Christ church before that. And there was this
Uh-huh.
sense of belonging, right? She was a Howard grad. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. She's my soror. And so
Uh,
like all of she checked every institutional block, right? Like
right.
HBCU,
All of
Black
them.
church. We was like, we are in there, right? And so like,
Uh-huh.
and, and none of that helped, right? Like, so like
None of it.
none of it. Like we was strolling to the polls, we was praying to the polls, and none of it
Listen,
worked.
we had that thing at Howard ready. It's like all we needed was the results. We was ready.
Bruh, I'm sitting here like, what? Like, what did you had the Church of God in Christ endorse this lady? I knew we was winning then, like, but like, they don't even let you preach in the Church of God in Christ if you don't want. I was ready to let her be
We
president.
behind this.
Like I was like, we are in there, and none of it. I was like, Lord Jesus, where is Evelyn Higginbotham to tell y'all? I told y'all so. Like
Right.
these politics of survival that allowed us to endure or under the facade of surviving
Mm-hmm.
then, and they were still killing us, right? We have a generation that sees them as death dealing now, right? So what do institutions that heralded themselves as being the best among us, the houses for the best among us, the incubators for the best among us, what
Mm-hmm.
then do we say when literally the epitome of the best among us does not and does not prevail, right? Like
That's right.
what is the response and what is the answer? And how do we make sense of or reconcile that publicly we could support a Black woman to be candidate for president when privately our theologies still do the work of killing Black women every day, right? Like
That's right.
how many Kamalas had their spirits broken in congregate? Like I ain't even gonna lie, it was a couple of pastors that were vocal supporters of her, were doing campaign stops, and I was like, you got to be kidding me, because you are some of the biggest purveyors of misogynistic preaching
Right.
and teaching, and I'm like, huh, who would have thunk it, right? Um, so
I wonder if a bit of that was just like face saving, public face saving. I mean, I have no
absolutely.
way of knowing, but I wonder.
Well, I mean, you know me, so I was in some of the meetings and was like, how they get here, and would say it, and then it's like, well, here go
Uh-huh.
Bimbo, she gonna say something every time. Sure, I am, but it is this notion, right, of if these institutions and all of them means all of them mean something to me. I'm a member. I was born and raised and steeped in Black church. I graduated from an HBCU. I'm a member of a Black Greek letter organization. And I know that at the end of the day, everything that I was told about who I could be
Mm-hmm.
in their eyes by my folks wasn't true, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it because the white folks still saw me as somebody who was not and is not worth their own interrogation of whiteness and supremacy to create the change in them that makes life easier for me, right? And so
Yeah.
the
Yep.
question now becomes, what then do we do with these organizations to reframe
Mm-hmm.
missions, to reframe importance, to actually retell kind of the narrative and shift the gaze, right?
Yeah.
That it need not be about being accepted by them. It
Yep.
need to be about what do we need to be the best community, the best people, the best versions of ourselves for each other. And I think that unless we are really ready to kind of do those kind of autopsies, particularly in Black church space, right?
Absolutely.
I don't know if we I don't know if that's the kind of heavy lifting that churches are willing to do. And I think that that is why so many of us, though we remain committed to churches, I
Uh-huh.
think a lot out of belonging, a lot out of like, I think about myself. Like, I'm not, I think about church and my membership from two lenses or three. One, I was raised right. So like I know I was supposed to play. So I told somebody, they were like, I ain't never think you would join a church again. I was like, I have this vision that when I get to glory, my grandma gonna be like, what took you so long? Like what took you so long to join the church? You knew you was supposed to be back in there 4 years before you joined. Like I know she gonna say something, right? And so, but then the other part of it is there is a part that is very strategic for me as a single Black woman. I go to the same service, so I see the same people. I make sure
Mm-hmm.
that before I leave, I say hey to the same people that I say hey to, that I've talked to throughout the week. So if they do not see
Uh-huh.
me, right? We ain't see Candice. They're gonna text me and see where I am. Where like
What's
those are
going on?
strategic protective measures that us as single women have to think through. And then there's the other part of like there will always be something sacred and special and meaningful to me to be around Black people of faith, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Now I can't stand, and I tell my church and my pastors, I can't stand praise and worship. I think it's the whitest part of the Black church service. Because it's us singing
That's
secret
right.
and I hate it. So that part I could do away with. I'm probably texting and not paying attention to praise and worship. And I don't even feel bad. But like there is the
I know you're
connection.
right though.
I don't feel bad. Like it is. I'm like, if I wanted this, I would be at a white Methodist church. Like it's just, I care less about these
What are we
songs.
doing, y'all?
What
We
are we
have a
doing?
tradition. What are we
Exactly.
doing?
But I love praying with us. I love being in the space when we are calling down breakthrough, when we are praying, when we are when we are doing the call and response, that is only what we can do
Mm-hmm.
in discernment. I love that, right? But I also know that there's some real transformational hands in dirt work that needs to be done that isn't being done in those spaces, that has to be done outside of those spaces, that I am committed to, right? And so
Right.
when I think about even the church in this moment, there's a lot of reckoning that the church must face, if it is going to, if we are in a moment, and I'll say this and I'm a hush, where 92%, and they got their shirts that say,
Huh.
I'm one of the 92. They are not, if they are saying they are going to be hands off with a political system that is not serving them, what you think they finna do to a religious institution that is not serving them?
Right. Right. I
It's
think that's Candice. What you, as I listen to you, what you have your finger on, and what you're insisting upon, as I listen to you, is to not forsake the general and the liberative sociality of Black life.
yes,
There is a
yeah,
fundamental sociality of Black life that moves against the grain of all temptations towards individuation,
yeah,
all
yeah,
temptations.
yeah,
And that's what I hear you like constantly in this conversation, making a marker in the sand about,
yeah.
that we cannot abandon that. I mean, the way
We
you just told that story about, I say hi to the same folk.
Yeah,
And what you're doing is, in many ways, is that hi, that hello, is a witness of connectedness.
mhm,
So that
mhm,
if anybody misses you,
mhm,
what they are missing is that connectedness, that
mhm,
sociality.
mhm, mhm.
And I think it's so important. And yeah, I just wanted to underscore that. And I think that's for me, it's the like the heart of the matter, that we
Yeah.
cannot abandon this.
Yeah, and I and what we have to keep in our forefront is that is the goal of this political moment. That is the goal. It has been Empire's objective all along.
Right.
And it does it so seductively, um
Yes.
that if we are not tethered to and in tune to each other's movement and seeing and recognizing each other's movement
Mhm.
as essential to our own, we will be easily seduced, right? That we
Listen,
will.
I'm going to put a clip. I'm going to put a clip on that because I want what you just said. That's it.
Yeah.
That is so important. Please keep on talking. That's
Yeah,
it.
we will be so easily seduced to the point where it will not matter that we are disconnected, and we will not realize how deficient we are within ourselves because we are not plugged in, right? Like I think about, and I go back to this because I have been thinking about, and you're pushing me now to see Hagar as an artist, but I saw that moment of her going back
Uh,
as Hagar as a community organizer and
and of
what
course,
it
these
means.
things are not separate, right? The
Absolutely.
artist,
Like they are not
the work of
separate.
art
Yeah,
is the making of community. I mean,
yeah.
these are
It is
together. Absolutely.
it is absolutely connected. And so I have been seeing the wilderness as this place where she does not die,
Hmm.
but is imbued with enough energy and strength to make the journey back, trusting that even in this space that was death dealing to her, she will be met with what she needs to endure it. And I've seen kind of the kind of the space between like the election day and the election day and inauguration day as like that moment. One, because I was invited to 8 and was only able to make 2, 8 weddings of friends who are same gender loving and queer who were like, who had planned to get married later, but were
Had to
advised
speed it up.
to speed it up under the guise that, you know, it's easier to stop marriages than it is to annul them, right? And so and I was only able to make 2 of those services, but at one of them, I remember sitting there and I was like, this is exactly what I need in order to just take the breath to go into whatever we were about to face, right? It
Yes.
was the gathering of community. It was watching she's my sister get married and the love that was in that room, and her to say like, I know that this isn't what either one of us planned, but I hope, and I'm gonna ask her because I said I was gonna write it, but in her vows she was like, she said something to the effect of like, I know this is not what we planned, but I hope that we're able to see that the way our community showed up for us is God showing up for us for where we are, where we gotta go.
Yes.
And and I remember sitting there and I was just like, that's it. No, this ain't what none of us wanted. This ain't not what none of us wanted. But I hope that where we show up for each other and where we fight for each other and where we push each other and where we advocate for each other and where we love each other and make each other laugh, I hope that we see that as God giving us what we need to keep going through what we gotta go through.
Yeah. Listen, it's beyond me to fully break down what I'm getting ready to say, so I'll just go and say it. But for me, that is the manifestation of the existence of God.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That communion, that getting together, that being with each other.
Yeah.
Which is the circulation of love. That being together is the circulation of love, is also the manifestation of God. Or we might say, beyond Thomas Aquinas, it's proof of the existence of God.
Yeah.
Our being together is the proof of the existence of God. And to disaggregate that is like an antichrist activity, right? And so I love what you were saying. I mean, and it comes back. I mean, I'm a big reader of Dolores Williams, and I just keep circling back to her and circling back to where we started, and talking about love. I've also been thinking a lot lately about Zora Neale Hurston, and thinking about, her meditation on High John the Conqueror. Also, of course, Their Eyes Were Watching God, and the revelation of Janie, right? That it was the moment in which a kind of eroticism, a kind of love and a connectedness was awakened into her. That was the moment that in many respects, all of her life, she was trying to like summon words to give meaning to.
Yeah.
And so when I hear you tell that story, and then I think about Dolores Williams, and I think about the kind of Womanist Project and the kind of Red Lip Theology, because audience, in case you didn't know, we just talked through Candice's book. In case you didn't know, if you want the fuller picture, go get the book. I think that these are the stakes. The stakes are a commitment to life or death, which is to say a commitment to love or not. Right? So let me see here and make sure. Okay. I think my thing is about to stop here. I think I only have so much time. Yeah, I want to make sure. I hope it's saying that it's uploading. Well, we will see if it's still recording, but I'm going to give you just one last thing. You've already been speaking about it and like land the plane on this one. And hopefully my recording is happening right. Well, we'll see, but I still want to hear you whether or not. And we'll land the plane on this because you've been so generous with your time. This recording is now an hour and 20 minutes in, so you've been more than generous. I want to land the plane on this, and I really believe you've already been talking to it, but it's really a chance to make it explicit. The last thing I told you that I wanted to talk about was a question that I think, for me at least, has been the overarching question of everything we've talked about from the time we started talking. And that is a question I hope that will speak to the audience. I'm interested in knowing how you have been spiritually navigating these times, because I'm of the view, and again, I think this has come out in so much of what you've said already. I'm of the view that what is ultimately targeted in this moment of violence and cultural and political degradation is the atrophying, the crucifying of our souls. I think you know the scholar Calvin Warren. He's working on a project and he's given a name to this that I find potent, and I'm eager to see how his research bears fruit in the book he's working on. But he says that we are in a moment of spiricide. The attempt to kill the spirit. We might call it psychocide, the attempt to lacerate and kill the soul. And I think ultimately the response to that, the basis of any kind of political resistance or refusal, right? If we think in terms of, a kind of Saidiya Hartman discourse of refusal and not just resistance, is going to be a buttressing of the spirit and of the soul work, spiritual work. So I'm interested in, if you would just offer us as we land this plane, how you have done any kind of spiritual work in this time to buoy the soul, to strengthen the spirit.
It's funny because we've been talking about community and a commitment to love. And that is what I had to go back to, right? Is that like I was weary because I felt like I was allowing all of these different, everything comes at you in so many different ways. And I had to ask myself, what makes me the most happy? What makes me the most alive? And I was like, it's loving on my people. Is a commitment to seeing God when I am with my friends, when I am with children, like just listening to them laugh. It is being committed to like not going off on this man that I love when he get on my nerves, right? Like it is making sure that
Good for him. He
like
lucky.
listen, because he was about to get it this week. But it is every day being intentional about being a soft place to land for myself and for the people that I love. And I am committed to that because I know that just as I am longing for those places and feel like the world is intentionally trying to snuff them out for me, they're trying to snuff them out for the people that I care about too, right? And it is love. Like I'm thinking about the hymn, like when nothing else could help, love lifted me, right?
Love
That
lifted
like
me. Yeah.
on my worst days, when my friends make me laugh, when they tell me you got this, and I feel like I can do anything. When that man tells me I'm the smartest person he knows, and I feel like I can just write 10,000. That is when I feel and come most alive. And I realize that is when I feel the closest to God. That is when I feel God-like. That is when I feel most aligned with what I feel I'm called to do and be in the world. It is not as much for me. I've learned this year, and I'm walking in it this year, that it is okay to want to change the world. But changing the world starts with trying to help transform and make the world a better place for the people that I'm looking at every single day.
Right.
And I think that that's the kind of soul work that we just got to get committed back to the radical, life-changing principle of loving each other and loving ourselves.
Yes.
And realizing that that is an act of political resistance it is a spiritual discipline, and
Mm-hmm.
it is sowing into an eschatological hope that that we all need to remind ourselves that it won't be like this always, you
That's
know?
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's oh, that's so beautiful. It's how can I put this? It's a messian, it's both a world making and a world building and a belief in a future that is not already dictated,
Mm.
right, by the unfolding present.
Yes. Yes.
And because it's not a future that is dictated by a violent present, it reconfigures the present.
Mm.
We don't have to wait. The tomorrow we long for is encased in the now practice of our love.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
different type of messianism. It's not a messianism that looks for the messianic transformation in the tomorrow. But the practice that we're engaged in loving now is the messianism of the present, right?
Yeah.
The Jewish philosopher Walter Benjamin called this a weak messianism, not a strongman messianism that we're struggling against. But it's a different type of it's a messianism of the loving present.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is what I'm hearing you. I mean, this is how I'm receiving what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing you also saying it that, like, shoot, it's like, okay, I'm glad that Walter said that in, the 1930s, as, he's Jewish and they're getting ready to go into the death camps. I'm so glad that he had this insight then, but Black folk have had to live this reality. This has been the way in which we've endured our exhaustion.
Because the world didn't give it.
Because the world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. Right? It's like we've always built and sculpted a beautiful vase around the nothingness of a despair and an exhaustion.
Whew.
We've always done that. And that's called the practice of love. Sister, I'm so grateful for you. This has been, unless anybody think I was just sitting here with all the questions, like, these are notes, y'all. These are my notes.
Look, we are so the same.
These are my notes.
We are so the same.
I'm trying to write fast as I can, trying to keep up with these insights you rolling out.
We are so the same. We are so the same.
Yeah, listen, I'm so grateful for you. We are an hour and a half in, and like I said, I really want to just both appreciate you giving me and giving all of us generously of your time and your reflections, and don't want to wear out my welcome either, so that if I ever got to call you back, once you get this, you roll out your next thing, I got to call you back, so that way you be like, yeah, okay, I'll go. He's not going to keep me forever, so I'll go back.
Thank you.
All right. Listen, audience, this is episode 1. This is complete, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just like trying to follow what I think is a vision. My mom and my grandmama used to say, walk in your calling. So I'm trying to do something like that now. And we're going to see what comes of it. More importantly, I want this to be a blessing to all of us out here. I want to craft conversations with intellectual depth, but also able to reach you, that you can get it. And Candice, you've come through. You've certainly blessed me. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
And I think you will have, when this thing gets published, I think it will be a blessing to many people as well. I'm so grateful for you. Keep it up. You got more than 10,000 more words in you. Give me them 100,000. You got it in you. You got way more than 10,000. All right, everybody. Love y'all. Whenever we get this next episode up, we're going to get it out. In the meantime, thank you, Candice. You are wonderful. And thank you all for tuning in to what is the first episode of the Religion Otherwise conversation with J. Cameron Carter, the first guest, Candice Marie Benbow. Thank you all. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.